Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 36.
Welcome to the Out of Order Podcast, your window into the firearms community, exploring those shaping the future of our rights and protecting our lifestyle, laws, legal cases, activism, and self-defense in a candid and honest podcast for our brothers and sisters in arms. Here's your host, James Kalita.
Thank you for tuning in to the Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 36. Today's guest is Sam Paredes, the Executive Director of Gun Owners of California. Before I bring Sam on, I wanted to let you guys know about a new video I produced. Produce is a generous word. We all know how important it is to stay in contact with your state and federal representatives and letting them know how you feel about gun control. And it takes time. And I've put together a system that you could use with free software and a one-time setup that'll let you remind your representatives daily, weekly, monthly, as often as you like, your views on gun control. And I set up a website where you can sign up and get that email sent to you with all the information about how you can automatically notify your representatives to oppose all gun control measures, and you can find that at nagyourrep.com. And now, here's Sam.
Paredes, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. How are you doing today, James?
Good, thank you. Good. So, Sam, you're the Executive Director of Gun Owners of California. Could you tell us a little about that organization?
Sure. Gun Owners of California is actually the oldest pro-gun political action committee in America. Back in 1975, when both Congress and, in our case, California, invented or passed legislation on campaign finance reform and created what we now know as political action committees, my boss, Senator H.L. Richardson, who served in the legislature for 22 years and was a board member of the NRA, created Gun Owners of California and Gun Owners of America, because in California in 75 was the first time that the legislature voted or created a bill to ban handguns. So we've been around for a very long time, and now, of course, NRA ILA, they're the Big Mac Daddy on the block, and that's a good thing. But we've been around all this time.
Great. And so I've read that you grew up in California, but how did you come to be involved in firearms politics?
Well, I did. I grew up in East Los Angeles, and I went to Pepperdine University and got a degree in political science, and I realized that I did not want to go to law school. So I married right out of college and moved to manage a state senate campaign in the Central Coast of California for a pro-gun candidate, Eric Seastran, who was running for state senate in a very hotly contested race. And after that campaign, I was invited to come to Sacramento and work as a field guy for Gun Owners of California towards the end of 1980. And I jumped on that chance, and I've been either an employee or a member of the board of directors since 1980.
Wow. And so, looking at California now, it's like the deck seems like it's really stacked against you guys. Has it been that way since you got started in 1980, or is it?
No, it's definitely tilting far to the left, more so than it was back in the 1980s. When you realize that from 1975 to 1989, we were successful in defeating every gun bill that came before the legislature that was sponsored. We defeated anti-gun candidates in elections. We elected pro-gunners. We had both Democrats and Republicans that were pro-Second Amendment. And then after 1989, when we had the Stockton schoolyard shooting, the dam burst. We had a Republican governor who signed the original assault weapons ban, the bill that invented the term assault weapon. political definition of a term to demonize a whole category of guns. And since then, we've been, for a variety of reasons, lack of leadership of those who are, conservative to libertarian thinking and pro-Second Amendment, and allowing the other side to get the upper hand. And we're just, some people think that we are sinking to the abyss, but I beg to differ. I think that we still have a fighting chance to take the state back.
That would be great. And what kind of strategies are you guys employing over there to turn it around?
Well, there are a couple of things that we work in three areas. We work in the legislature and lobbying. We do that knowing full well that we are going to have our rear ends handed to us in a basket regularly there, because the left wing is in such staunch control of the California legislature. But we do it anyways because we understand that the members of the legislature are not our audience. It's the microphones and the cameras that are projecting what's going on in the legislature to the public, and that is our audience. We also never want to be caught in a situation where we're involved in the second aspect of what we do, and that's in the judicial area, where we go to a court and a judge comes to us and says, you know what, we have a government system that has three branches, and you folks chose not to be involved in one of the branches when it had to do with the Second Amendment, that being the legislative branch. Why are you coming to the courts now for your resolution? So we definitely fight in the legislature, and then we fight in the courts. Our role here at Gun Owners of California is not to be the group that files the main legal challenges to the anti-gun laws in California, but our role is to be for lack of better terms, we've been dubbed the wrangler of amicus briefs. We identify and coalesce various organizations that need to have their voice heard before the courts in support of many of these legal challenges. That is true not only for California, but for many lawsuits that have been filed throughout the country. Gun Owners of California is one of the lead amici or amicus brief supporters of these lawsuits. And people say, well, how do you know if they make any difference? Well, the fact that in the last two Supreme Court decisions, a Supreme Court justice quoted our amicus brief kind of tends to lead us to believe that, they actually really do make a difference and they read them. So we will continue to do that. And James, sometimes, when you file a lawsuit, you're limited to the number of pages and the number of words that you submit to the court in a lawsuit. Amicus brief adds to the body of that with our own limitation on pages, but we add new players that couldn't be heard in the main lawsuit. Like, for instance, we coalesced almost 30 different law enforcement groups throughout the country to weigh in on a court case, and Gun Owners of California was the only pro-gun organization. And that's because the law enforcement groups don't have the financial resources. They don't raise money to be involved in lawsuits. So we paid for the lawsuit, but we made sure in this case that law enforcement's voice was heard before the court. So it's a very strategic and tactical thing that we do that is very important to the judicial side. And finally, the last thing that we do is that we are involved in elections in California. We help find, recruit, train candidates. We select those races that have the potential for being turned around from an anti-gun seat to a pro-gun seat, or to defend a pro-gunner, and we get involved with some of the other pro-gun organizations who follow our leadership to support pro-gun candidates. So that's our body of work. That's what we do every single day of the year, every year.
That is an incredible amount of work, and that's so good to hear that it was the Supreme Court justices quoted your amicus briefs. I guess I'm cynical. I would have thought that they didn't read them, but obviously if they're quoting them, they do.
Yeah. Yep. It is amazing.
Right. So I grew up in an anti-gun state, New Jersey, and around here people say all the time, or actually not around here, but outside, sort of in the middle where there's not that much gun restriction, they tend to say things like just vote them out, or it's your own fault that you have this kind of government. How do you respond to people like that?
Well, the reality is that it wasn't always this way, and it isn't your fault or my fault, because we have been for quite some time actively fighting back, doing what we can, given our gifts and our abilities and our strengths, to fight back against the anti-gun encroachment, the encroachments on the Second Amendment. But James, the reality is that a lot of people who believe and support the Second Amendment have been sitting on their duffs for a very long time and allowing the other side to become better at politics, better at legal challenges, and better at elections. And we, given the political system that our founding fathers established and sacrificed their lives for, have an opportunity to fight back, to get better at elections, to get better in the courts, to get better at lobbying the legislature. And as long as we still have the ability to vote, we have a responsibility to talk to Americans who believe in the Second Amendment and to get them active and fighting back. Sure, there are some places like New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, California, where that job is much more difficult. But just because the job is tough doesn't absolve us of the responsibility of fighting back and fighting anywhere where the fight takes place, because a victory in Oklahoma or Texas or Mississippi is a victory for us here in our states. And we have to have that kind of a view. And you know, we've chosen to do this in the political arena. James, you've chosen to be a voice of information, which is so incredibly important in order to get our message to people who need to be involved in this process. You need to have 10 million listeners to your podcasts and followers of your website. And you're working really hard at expanding it. I've been going through your website, and you do very good work, my friend. And we're trying to do everything we can to get more people politically involved. Now, you know what, James? You're a talented guy. You can't have everybody, just starting a podcast, because they might not be very good at it. But they should be supporting you because you are good. And you do have interesting people, and you do a service to those of us who believe in the Second Amendment. In our case, we're good at lobbying, we're good at elections, and we're good at amicus briefs. Those people who don't have talents and skills in those areas, they need to be supporting us as we do the battle for them. And what their job is to spread the word and awaken their friends, their family members, whoever they come in contact with. Hey, we need to get involved or we're going to lose our rights. So kind of together we're carrying this fight forward.
Thank you. Yeah. And how can people help you? How can they?
There's two things they can do. Three things they can do. Number one, we like to say they need to stay armed and informed. Informed by going to our websites and educating themselves on what is really, truly going on. Going and listening to your podcast. Getting better at the use of firearms, whether it's the American Warrior Society podcast and group, or other organizations that are giving people information both on the use and training of firearms and what the real news is about what's going on out there with regards to the Second Amendment, giving people accurate information. Next, everybody, if you can't afford to travel to your capital and fight and testify in support of the Second Amendment, the cost of one box of ammunition, $35 a year, can go towards supporting those people who have committed their lives to doing that professionally on their behalf. supporting organizations like that is incredibly important. And finally, the thing that doesn't cost any money at all is spreading the word and talking to your family members and your friends and anybody who will listen about people's rights and what they can do to protect the Second Amendment. Those are simple things that people do. It doesn't cost a lot to do it, but they need to be involved in doing that. You know, James, people like you and me, we want to enjoy our lives, our families, our vacations, our avocations, the things that we enjoy. But we spend so much of our lives spreading the word because we know that it's an important thing to do. And people can be a part of that by supporting financially, supporting with their words, and learning about the subject matter.
Thank you. That is excellent advice, and it comes up so often during these interviews that the first time you take someone shooting, it changes their perspective, and that goes along with what you're saying with talking to your friends and family members that if you take one person out, that's one less anti-gun voter that's out there.
You are absolutely correct. I'm a concealed carry weapons permit instructor in California, and a pistol instructor, and a hunter. I can't tell you. I cannot remember a single time when I have taken a new shooter, somebody who's never shot before, and taken them to shoot either at a range or at my home or out in the hunting fields, that they haven't absolutely been hooked. And it's like a light bulb goes on in their head and says, hey, this is not only really cool, this is really important. What can I do to learn more about it, and how can I protect this right? So your novice and new shooter is your future defender of the Second Amendment. You are absolutely correct, ma'am.
So, Sam, I've been asking all of my guests if there are any books they recommend that gun owners read, whether it be liberty-related or firearms-related.
My goodness. First of all, the bibliography that you have on your website is amazing. I mean, it is close to second to none out there. If people were to avail themselves of all of the titles that you have mentioned on your website, they would be very well educated, and they would be very well trained, and they would be reading for years to come, because there's so much really good material on there.
Yes.
As far as politics are concerned, here in California, everybody should order a copy of California Gun Laws, a guide to state and federal firearms regulations. It's authored by Chuck Michelle, an attorney who's a friend of mine and also the president of the California Rifle and Pistol Association, one of our partner organizations out there. He is in his 5th edition of this book. It goes through all of the laws, state and federal, and how they affect every Californian. And it has to be updated every year because, as you well know and hear about, we continue to pass more and more laws every stinking year. Also, if you want to know how to fight politically, there's a book called Confrontational Politics that was written by my boss, Senator H.L. Richardson, and it kind of takes everything that we've always known about effective political activity and puts it into one cohesive plan. You hear the term confrontational politics, and you have visions of Antifa and the hard left fighting and yelling and screaming and bullhorns and stuff. Confrontational politics is not about that. Confrontational politics is learning how to fight, learning the system, and learning how to win. What you need to do to win. And I'm going to send you a copy of it because I think it would be important for you to have in your library. Okay. Golly, there's certainly not a lack of information for people to get out there. If people avail themselves of even any of the gun magazines that are out there, the publications, their eyes will be open. And I know that the magazines are driven by advertising dollars and things like that, but still there's a value in the education that you can get from that, and then seeking out websites like yours to find titles that people can read in order to be educated. You know, what a great title, Out of Order, James Galita, Freedom and Firearms, man. That's just so very cool, and it's exactly what it is, man. This country, and in particular our state, California, is going nuts. But we can't stand aside and just let it go down the toilet. There are too many good people that are a remnant here in California for us not to fight. And bottom line, James, what we do in defending the Second Amendment and the rights of people to acquire, own, and use firearms, bottom line, saves tons of lives. If we allow the left to continue their legislative process, every anti-gun law that makes it through every legislature and through the Congress makes it harder for law-abiding citizens to get guns for their protection. We know full well, everybody will tell you that it's somewhere between 14 and 16,000 people are murdered in a crime with guns nationwide. We also know for a fact that somewhere between 2 and 3 million people in America use guns every year to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So if we make it harder for them to get guns, you are by definition taking these people out of the category of survivors, and you're going to put them in the category of victims. So I know that what we do saves hundreds of thousands of lives, and that's why it's important to keep fighting.
Thank you. That's excellent. Where can people find you online?
You can Google Gun Owners of California. Our website is www.gunownersca.com, GUNOWNERSCA.com. Gun Owners of America is gunowners.org. We have a foundation that we use, Gun Owners Foundation, that we use to file lawsuits and to do, publish works that need to be published. But we've been in this fight for a very long time, and we are all very committed to this. This is our lives. This is our calling. This is our mission, to be involved in this fight. We're not doing it to get rich, because I'm telling you, being a gun lobbyist in California is not a way to recommend it as a good financial path if you want to,
right.
support your families. But
we're
able to do that thanks to the support of tons of gun owners. James, we, unlike the other side, don't have billionaire sugar daddies who grant us $1 million here and $500,000 there to do these various projects. We exist only on the good graces of people who can afford to send $35 a year to support what we do. And thankfully, there are a lot of people who can do that and want to be engaged, and they continue to support us because we are successful at what we do. Even though it looks like we're on the Titanic here in California, and where the governor will sign 4 or 5 anti-gun bills every year, what people don't see is the 35 or 40 bills that we were able to derail or kill in the legislative process every single year. So it's a harrowing fight, man, but we got to be committed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Sam, I thank you very much for being on the show, and I'll put those links on the show notes page, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
James, I look forward to it. Now, what you've made me do is I'm going to have to go back to the beginning and start listening to all of your podcasts, because I think the work you're doing is really, really good, really good. So thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to speaking with you again, and as you can tell, we're very passionate about this.
Thanks for tuning in to Out of Order Gun Rights Podcast, episode 36. Show notes for today's page, where you can find links to Gun Owners of California, Sam's the book Sam's mentioned, and of course to nagyourrep.com, where you could get that free guide to automatically notifying your reps how you feel about gun control. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.